What if someone in your life right now, at this very moment, is using dark psychology against you, and you don't even realize it? This isn't a theoretical question. This isn't a question for other people out there. This is a question for you personally, because dark psychology isn't what you see in movies. It doesn't wear a black mask. It doesn't announce itself. It hides behind kindness, behind caring, behind love, and that's precisely why it's so frighteningly effective. Your brain is wired to trust social threats. And this is exactly where at this point, it's being tricked in this video. I'll show you 5 concrete signs that someone is using dark psychology against you. 5 patterns you might recognize in your life today, and once you see these patterns, you'll never look at people the same way again. Before we get to the 5 signs, we need to clarify one thing. What exactly is dark psychology? Most people think dark psychology means blatant manipulation. Someone who lies to you, someone who hits you, someone who directly controls you. But that's not true. Dark psychology is subtle. It's the art of influencing another person's thoughts, feelings, and behavior without that person realizing they're being influenced. It exploits the natural weaknesses of the human brain. Our fear of rejection, our need for belonging, our tendency to distrust our own perceptions. Psychologists have spent decades developing a concept they call the dark triad. The dark triad describes 3 personality traits that often occur together: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. People with these traits aren't necessarily evil, but they have a significantly higher propensity to manipulate others for their own ends. Think about it. How many people do you know who always sit in the middle, who are always right, who never apologized, but always expect apologies from you? That's no coincidence. What if I told you that these people are using a system consciously or unconsciously designed to control you? And what if I told you that this system has 5 recognizable patterns? Let's look at them. Section 1. Love bombing. Psychologists call the first sign love bombing. And that might sound romantic, but it's anything but. Imagine this. You meet someone, and this person from the very beginning makes you feel like the most important person in the world. Constant messages, countless compliments, grand gestures, deep conversations, the feeling of finally having found someone who truly understands you. You think, this is it. This is the connection I've been waiting for. But here's the question you need to ask yourself. Why so fast? Real connections take time, okay? They develop through shared experiences, through trust that is built slowly, okay? When someone showers you with intense affection from the very beginning, it's not a sign of deep feelings. It's a tactic. Love bombing works because it activates the brain's reward system. Your brain releases dopamine, the same neurotransmitter that's activated during gambling and social recognition. You literally become dependent on this person, on their attention, on their validation, and then when the dependency is strong enough, the love bombing stops suddenly. The person is cold, distant, and you fight to get things back to how they were before. You change your behavior so that this person will be the way they were with you at the beginning. That was the whole point. Psychologist Ross Rosenberg calls this pattern the human magnet syndrome. the human magnet effect. People with a strong need for affection are attracted to people with a strong need for control. Like magnets, think about it. Has there ever been someone in your life who was perfect at the beginning and then changed? Where did you feel the need to somehow reclaim the old version of this person? That wasn't a coincidence. That was the first sign. Section 2. Gaslighting. The second sign is one of the most destructive tools of dark psychology. It's called gaslighting. The term comes from a 1938 British play Gaslight. In it, a man manipulates his wife by secretly dimming the gaslights in their house and then telling her she's imagining it. She begins to distrust her own perception. She thinks she's going crazy. That's gaslighting. The systematic undermining of your own reality. And it starts so subtly that you barely notice it. Asterisk, I never said that. You're misremembering. You're being too sensitive. You're overreacting again. No one else would see it the way you do. Each of these statements heard just once could be true. People sometimes remember things wrong. People sometimes overreact. That's normal. But what if these statements become a pattern? What if, after every conversation with this person, you question your own memory? What if you start to believe that maybe you really are the problem? Then something darker is at work. What if I told you that gaslighting causes neurologically detectable damage? Studies show that chronic gaslighting leads to the same symptoms as trauma, anxiety, depression, cognitive confusion. Your brain, which is designed for social consistency, literally goes into a state of emergency when the people around you constantly challenge your reality. Your brain is tricking you. Not alone. It's being helped. A specific example. Imagine you confront someone about behavior that hurt you. Instead of taking responsibility, the person says, "Look what you're making of this now. I can't believe you're blaming me for this. Stressed I am right now." In that moment, not only does your concern disappear, but you end up apologizing for bringing it up. Think about it. Is there someone in your life whose conversations always leave you feeling worse than before? Someone you never know what you did wrong, but you're somehow certain it was your fault. That's gaslighting. That's the second sign. Section 3. Silent treatment. The third sign is one you may have even accepted as normal. It's called silent treatment. In other words, silence as punishment. Everyone needs space sometimes after a conflict. That's healthy. That's human. When someone says, "I need some time to process this," that's not manipulation. That's emotional maturity. But silent treatment is something else entirely. Silent treatment means a person withdraws completely without explanation, without a time frame, without warning precisely when you need support or communication. It's not a break to process things. It's punishment by withdrawal, and the effect on your brain is brutal. Kipling Williams, a social psychologist at Purdue University, has spent decades researching social exclusion. His findings are clear. The brain reacts to social exclusion with the same neural pain signals as it does to physical pain. Literally, the same areas light up when someone is silent around you deliberately. In response to a behavior, your brain activates the same protective response it would in response to a physical threat. You become anxious. You start searching. What did I do wrong? How can I make it up to them? You chase after the other person not because you're in the wrong, but because your brain wants to end the social pain. And that's precisely the goal. Silent treatment is a tool of power. It sends a very clear message. I can erase you from my reality whenever I want. It establishes a hierarchy. And you fight to be included in that reality again. What if I told you that people who regularly use the silent treatment are very much aware of what they're doing? It's rarely unconscious. It's a learned strategy that works because you react. And here's the crucial point. When the silence ends, when the person is back to normal, you feel relief, almost gratitude. Your brain associates that person's return with positive feelings. You've been conditioned. That's no coincidence. That's the third sign. Section 4. DARVO. The fourth sign is one that psychologists have given an acronym. DARVO, DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. In other words, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. And once you've seen this pattern, you'll recognize it everywhere. Here's how it works. You bring up a problem. Maybe someone crossed your boundaries. Maybe you felt you were treated unfairly. You say it matter-of-factly, calmly, clearly. What happens? First, denial. That's not true. That's not how it happened. You misunderstood. Perception is immediately challenged. Second, attack. The person becomes defensive, but not passive. They attack. How can you accuse me of that? Do you know everything you've done to me? Suddenly, you're in the dock. Third hand. This is the crucial step. Victim and perpetrator are reversed. You're no longer the person who raised the issue. The one attacking, asterisk, who hurts. I can't believe you're treating me like this. Look what you're doing to me. You're destroying me with your words. Jennifer Freyd, a psychologist at the University of Oregon, first described DARVO in 1997. She initially found this pattern in abuse victims, people who spoke out about abuse, and were then suddenly portrayed as the aggressor. But DARVO isn't just found in extreme cases. It occurs in marriages, in friendships, in families, in work relationships. The effect? You stop addressing problems. You learn that confrontation causes more pain than silence. You adapt not because it's right, but because it feels safer. Think about it. Are there topics in your relationships that you just don't talk about anymore? Not because they're unimportant, but because you know what'll happen if you bring them up. That's DARVO. That's the fourth sign. Section 5. Isolation. The fifth and night. The fifth and night. Perhaps most subtle sign is isolation. And it's so dangerous because it never feels direct. No one says to you, you can't see your friends. No one says your family is off limits. It doesn't work that way. This is how it really works. It starts with little comments. Your friend Emmy don't know. There's something off about her. Your parents are always interfering, aren't they? Have you noticed how your colleague talks about you? They don't have your best interests at heart. At first, these comments sound caring. This person is looking out for you. They're warning you. They see things you don't. But over time, very slowly, something changes. You spend less time with Emma. You call your parents less often. You distance yourself from colleagues. And you barely notice it happening because every time you spend time with one of these people, there are comments afterward. Coldness. Mood swings. It's easier to cut ties than to endure these mood swings, and that's precisely the goal. What if? I told you that isolation isn't primarily the goal but the means. The real goal is dependency. When your entire social network, your support systems, your outside perspectives, your friends who would say, "Come on, this doesn't sound normal," is gone, then only one person remains. The person who cut it. You are now completely dependent on this person for social connection, for validation, for the feeling of not being alone. And in that moment, in that dependencies, this person has complete control. Psychologist Evan Stark calls this pattern coercive control. She describes it as a system that doesn't encompass individual incidents but restricts a person's entire life. And she emphasizes isolation is at the heart of this system. Your brain is a social organ. It needs other perspectives. It needs connections that exist outside of a single individual. When these connections are systematically severed, your brain loses its natural protective function. Think about it. Is there a relationship in your life that has caused you to distance yourself from other people? Not because you wanted to, because it felt easier. That's isolation. That's the fifth sign. Maybe you've watched this video and recognized one or more of these signs. Maybe you're in a moment right now where you're thinking, yes, that's me. That's my situation. If that's the case, then the first thing you need to know is this. You haven't failed. Your brain has done what it was built to do. It has sought connection, sought safety, sought belonging. Good. Dark psychology exploits these very instincts. Knowing this is the first step, and here are 3 concrete things you can do. First, name the pattern. When you recognize one of the 5 mechanisms, give it a name. This is gaslighting. This is silent treatment. Language gives you distance from the situation. Instead of feeling that something is wrong without knowing what, tell yourself, I see. What's happening here? Second, seek external perspectives. Talk to someone you trust outside the situation, a friend, a family member, a therapist. Dark psychology operates in secret. It works less effectively when you shine a light on it. Third, retrust your own perception. Gaslighting and Darvo both aim to disconnect you from your own reality. Start writing down your experiences, conversations, incidents, moments that felt wrong. Not because you're gathering evidence, but because it gives your brain an anchor. Something to hold on to. Dark psychology is powerful, but it's not invincible. And conscious asterisk being ignorant is the most powerful defense mechanism you have. So, is someone in your life really using dark psychology against you? Well, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe it's just someone who's struggling themselves and doesn't know how else to react, but that's precisely the difference. Knowledge protects you. When you know the 5 signs: love bombing, gaslighting, silent treatment, Darvo, and isolation, or no longer the unwitting target, you're someone who understands the game, and someone who understands the game can decide how to respond. Think about it. If this video has given you something, a new perspective, a pattern that suddenly makes sense. Share it with someone you'd like to help. Sometimes the most valuable thing we can do is give someone else the knowledge they need. See you next time.